You asked for it, and here it is, the build for the Stormbreaker, the newest hull in Battle Pirates, which has some interesting stuff going on with Evade, the anti-missiles, and some different special choices that I haven't seen a lot of people discussing. Hey everyone, Derpy here, and welcome back to another Battle Pirates video. As I get started, first of all, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. A few of you did ask when this build will be coming out, and it's here. I've also gone ahead and updated it in the build stock, which, by the way, is brought to you by channel members. If you appreciate the work that I do, you can click the join button below the YouTube video, right above the like button, and you can help support content like this, although the build stock is 100% free to access. You just have to copy and paste these hash codes and stuff like that into your shipyard. But getting back to the ship itself, I came out with a pre-VXP weekend idea, told you to build some blanks, build some core specials. It was highly probable that the flagship would be an evade ship, and well, that's going to be the case. Now, taking a look, the first thing I'm going to go through is the flag, because this is the most complicated. I'm going to show it on the normal Stormbreaker, actually, because I guess I can show you the flag, because I have got that one upgraded and stuff, but just keep in mind the build time is not the same as what you're seeing here. Now, the flag needs to be an evade ship because it has more armor points than the standard ones, and with Kingkiller and the targets, that means that the flag is going to get fired at first. For that reason, it's going to be very evade heavy. The first special is going to be the default one that came out with the ship, and this is going to be the engine. You'll also notice that I don't own the engine yet, which is a little bit funny, but don't worry, I'll get it from the TLC if it's in there. The second special is going to be an evade special. I'm going to pencil in Guidance Scrambler 3, but we'll come back to actually change this special later. I just want to show you that I'm starting out with a high evade build. Now, this is basically all you need for an evade build. You could do something if this was a siege ship, like lowered cannon mount or some of the other stuff. There's some, just some different missile systems and stuff like that that you could equip on here that reduce the combat speed but do give you more evade. Unfortunately, none of them are really compatible. I guess you could do lower penetrative mount if you really wanted to, which has a negative 25% combat speed modifier. You could do this, give you 30% more evade, but lose some of that, and try and make it back with some weapons, putting on some siege mortar Vs and stuff like that. I'm not going to do this because you actually need the weapon slots for countermeasures, because this is going to double as your countermeasure ship. We'll get back to this one after I finish equipping some of the other specials and stuff. We'll just go ahead and take this one off. Now, the note of countermeasures, and you're going to ask the question, which countermeasures are going to work? Now, there are actually three types of countermeasures in the game. One of these is the Gale 4, for instance, and the Gale 4, if you take a look at this one, is an anti-explosive or anti-mortar damage type. This is not damage type countermeasure and only affects things that say anti-explosive or anti-mortar. Some standard countermeasure systems, such as the Gala defense system, affect all three of these things: anti-explosive, anti-penetrative, and countermeasure. This is very likely not going to work in the targets if Kixeye has done their homework, because they have explicitly told us that even though the Gale says it counters mortars and UAVs, the UAVs in the target, Kixeye has told us on the strategy guide, are only shot down by anti-penetrative damage types. That means anything like the Gale, which is anti-explosive, is not going to work. Same thing if you were to look at the Sprint countermeasure, for instance, which is a blueprint special. The Sprint is a countermeasure, not a, it's not anti-explosive, it's not anti-penetrative, and because only anti-penetrative things work in the target, the Sprint, being damage type countermeasure, is not going to fire. Even though by reading the blueprint, you would think that it can counter missiles and UAVs, it can't, because they have 100% countermeasure evasion, but a different amount, which is less than 100%, of anti-penetrative evasion. So your two choices for anti-penetrative specials in the game today are going to be the multiform missile system, which is a penetrative item right here. The multiform missile system is pretty interesting because it has multi-shot, which some of the standard blueprint specials, the damage scatterguns on the ship, do benefit from, and I believe it actually keeps firing infinitely until something's taken down, kind of like a Gale. The other choice is going to be the Well, that's not what I'm looking for. It's going to be MDS-3, so Missile Defense System 3, and this is also anti-penetrative, which is why it works. Now, there's no real way for Kixeye to, at least in my mind, in the game, differentiate between MDS-3 or multiform anti-missile, which one's going to work the best. The only thing you could really do is give something a lot of anti-penetrative evade, like 70, 80, 90%, which would mean that you want to fire at it multiple times a whole bunch, because MDS-3s only fire at each projectile once. Now, I am actually very tempted to use 1 or 2 MDS-3s on the entire fleet and call it good, because these things, the Salvo's 10 here, can deal with 10 incoming missiles before they have to reload, which means that you only need 1 or 2 on the entire fleet. Now, the reason I'm not going to do this is because my flagship, being an evade ship, basically has 6 weapon slots that are free for access. I can put whatever I want on there, and it's going to be the multiform anti-missile. I'm going to put 6 of these on the fleet because you can. If I could put 7 or 8 on here, I would. Now, this means that the ship is going to be a countermeasure ship, and it's going to have a few countermeasure specials and a few anti-evade specials, I should say. Now, in a different world, and I think it's actually possible that the build I'm not going to recommend works out better, which is making the flag entirely evade, lower cannon mount, siege mortar V, all that crazy stuff, and making a second ship in the fleet have 1 or maybe 2 MDS-3s. That might work better, but I think it's pretty risky. I'm going to recommend the build that I'm very certain will work, not the build that I'm slightly sure will work a little bit better. So having countermeasures on the fleet on this ship means you have to put countermeasure specials on here, things that boost the anti-penetrative damage type. There is no reason, and every special, every countermeasure you have on the fleet that is not boosted by a special makes all the other ones worse, because it takes up a slot when this thing shoots at one of those enemy projectiles. So you need to boost your multiforms with countermeasure specials. Now, the best one, and actually you have a few different options here, the ones that you're going to want to consider are going to be ones that also have multi-shot on those. And this is something that a few of you actually did point out. I was recommending the Odyssey decoy system or chaff splitter system. It turns out that the Odyssey decoy system is better because it has slightly higher scattergun reload, corrosive damage, stuff like that, whereas the chaff splitter system doesn't. The important stats, the +1 multi-shot and anti-missile range and accuracy, are the same, but this one is slightly better and will mean your 2 or 3 of your heavy scatterguns and stuff will be better on the fleet. So, Odyssey decoy system it is to boost the anti-missile stats on this one. Now, you're also going to want to further increase multi-shot, and the special that came out with the ship is a really good one for this. It gives you +2 multi-shot. You could look and see if there are any others that give you decent multi-shot. If there was one that was 3, I would probably use that instead, and it actually looks like Scatter System 2 is. So let's compare these ones. Archforward Overload gives +2 multi-shot and then 40% projectile speed. The other stats are not really worth looking at because they don't affect anything important. The Scatter System 2 here gives no projectile speed, and it complicates your fleet by giving it 10% combat speed. That 10% combat speed is actually negative because it means your fleet is going to start to destack. So for that reason, I'm going to opt for the Archforward Overloader instead. Even though, it has worse multi-shot, it does actually not mess up your fleet. The same thing could be said for Roaring Barrel System. There's no projectile speed on this one either, and projectile speed is actually quite important for your countermeasures because it helps them get to the incoming projectile more quickly and actually increase the likelihood of them firing and taking it down. So a few things to think about there. If you were really creative, maybe you could use Scatter System 2 on all 5 ships in the fleet, but Archforward Overloader is going to be the easy one to recommend. And then your last 2 specials, there's no point putting on any damage stuff because your 2 or 3 scatterguns on the fleet are going to do almost nothing. So let's just go ahead and throw on a bunch of damage, or evade specials on here. And we're going to put all D5 EB armors on the entire fleet because if things are not going to be shot down, they are going to be outrun or evaded. So, and that's true in this target, in this assault type generally, and in this case, based on the strategy guide specifically. And of course, for your last few weapons and stuff, you're going to want to throw on the scatterguns that came out with the ship, which is limited. Obviously, on this one, you're going to want to use your worst ones. Your common ones are totally fine. These do basically no damage to anything. And then the heavy, you can use whichever one you have. Check out the Forsaken Mission, Strike, stuff like that to get all these components. Now, this is the initial build I came up with, and I want you to pay attention to two stats because we have to do a little comparison game. The evade bonus on this is 89.9, and the anti-missile accuracy is 50%. So let's call that 90% and 50%. The thing I want to do is take a look at this evade special right here, and the question you might be asking yourselves is, should you swap this out with the default one that came out with the ship, that instead of giving 49.5% evade, 50%, it gives 40% evade, but gives you a little bit extra survival. You guys know I don't really like survival because once you have a million of it, 90k doesn't matter much. But the important stat here is plus 20% anti-missile accuracy. You can take your anti-missile accuracy from 50 to 70 by lowering your evade slightly from 90 to, let's see what it gives you here, and that evade goes down to 88. Putting this in a brief comparison spreadsheet, and again, we have the higher evade option right here with 89.9% evade, 50% anti-missile accuracy, against this other one that I think was 88% evade, 88.0, that's close enough to 88. So putting this at 88% evade and 70% anti-missile accuracy, you can take a look at the damage reductions if you just multiply these all straight out. It's not going to work entirely like that because your anti-missile is not going to fire at every incoming thing once, and it's not going to take down exactly 70% in the first case and exactly 50% in the last case. If these things have a ton of anti-penetrative evade, it might only take down 35% here and 20% here. Regardless, you can see that, having, actually, in that case right there, where the incoming projectiles, like your 70% only takes down 35% of the incoming, and your 50% only takes out 25% of the incoming, the damage taken would actually be lower for the higher evade ship. So in the case that countermeasures don't work very well, you're going to want to go for GS3. In the case countermeasures work relatively decently, you're going to want to go for the special blueprint special that came out that also gives some anti-missile stats. I think that it's pretty likely that anti-missiles are going to fire at least against a significant portion of the incoming weapons, and you can always get more evade from stuff like Sea Serpents and your Alliance bonus and stuff like that. For that reason, I'm actually going to recommend this build on the left. If you think that anti-missiles are trash, you're not going to use them, go for the build on the right. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this, leave that on here. The Iron Shield Calibrator is we're going to stick on here. It's an escalation of the Iron for plating. If you don't have that, special was one of the first ones that featured anti-missile accuracy that was stackable to stuff like Chaff and Odyssey decoy systems. So here is the build for the flagship. I'm actually going to go ahead and save this as Storm Flag so I can paste it into the DerpyTheCow build stock, which I'll show you right after, which I'll upload right after this video. So there is the standard flagship. You only want one like this because there's one flag. This is the one with 350 million armor points, but what's the build for the standard Stormbreaker? So let's go ahead and pull that ship up and go into refit. For this, it's going to be a pure damage ship. You're going to take your countermeasures, put the best ones across the entire fleet. You can see that I don't really have very many of them. I'm just going to use the blueprint ones instead. That's fine. Put on the best heavy you have, and those sorted. In terms of the armor, you need to use D5EV because you've used it on the other ship, the Flag, and this is going to give you the best chance at reducing any sort of evade stuff if your flagship dies or something like that, but really it's on here for the combat speed. Now you could try and use something else, like the stuff that armors that came out with the ship, for instance, do have some amount of utility because they actually, these ones don't. These are like pretty awful armors. Yeah, these are not very good. They don't give you anything other than just pure survival. There's no damage increase and stuff like that. So if you wanted to use the normal ones, I would actually drop down a few tiers and use one to give you plus 4% corrosive damage from the old legendary stuff. Is definitely what I would go for over the only survival armors. Like these are not that much better in terms of survival, 135k, or you could have something that gives you 90k and 4%. I know which one I would pick. It would be the one that gives you damage. Okay, in terms of these specials, speaking about damage, what do we want to put on here? Well, you need to use the Nimbus system or the same engine that you're using across the rest of the fleet. Just make sure the combat speed of your ships matches, or you're going to have a pretty sad day. Then you're going to want to use the Arcforge Overloader for the multi-shot reason. Again, if for some reason you think you want to use one that gives you another multi-shot, the Scatter System 2, which is generally better on lower base multi-shot weapons. If this was a multi of 2, it could be better. This being 4, it means that plus 1 multi-shot only increases the damage by roughly 25%, whereas the second lines on here increase this guy by 135 in addition to the reload, which is why people are going for this one over the standard one. Over the Scatter 2, I should say. And then the one that came out with the ship, the Blueprint Special, Ion Shield Calibrator. This is good, not for the evade necessarily, but the spread, corrosive damage, and stuff like that are good as well here. The evade bonus should not really matter because you should not be getting hit by any accuracy-based weapons on these back four. So this is actually the least important special on this fleet, on this ship in particular. It's really only here for the spread, corrosive damage stuff, which you could probably get through something else. In fact, we'll look at switching this one out later if things don't stack with it. Failforge Rounds is a solid one. This gives you corrosive damage, building damage, projectile speed. Very happy with this one. It's a super escalation of high velocity rounds, the old tier 4 special back in the day. Okay. Corrosive Battery 3 is another damage one you're going to want to use. This one right here, Corrosive Battery 3, limited, but it's tier 12, pretty old. You likely have copies of this one already. This is going to more than double your building damage. It's a no-brainer. And then the last special is going to be an anti-special, and you're going to say, Derpy, why are you putting an anti-special on the fleet? There are no antis on the ship, and that's true, but there are things that benefit from multi-shot, which is why using the Odyssey decoy system, which has that multi-shot, scattergun reload, corrosive damage, stuff like that, is still helpful. Now, what you could do is you could take the Ion Shield Calibrator, because again, all those stats aren't very helpful, and you could swap it out for something different. I mean, the iron for plating isn't very good. Neither is the Zin's bolstered bow, but I think actually something like Full Focus Choke that gives corrosive damage, I think that's going to be actually far superior than the special we had on here. I mean, all the missile stuff is hitting your flagship or getting shot down. The survival is not very effective because you have so much on the ship already. There's no combat speed that forces you to use this, so you should use a different damage special instead that did not come out with the ship. The compressed corrosions canisters, obviously you can't use the 2 version because that is for Conquerors, Narrowing Aperture, and Full Focus Choke. I think I'm going with Full Focus Choke unless there's something much better in the limited category, which I don't think there is. Not that stackable, and there's not. So actually, Kixeye, nice try with this special. That's okay for the flagship, but I'm going with FFC on this one because I need to do more damage to kill things more quickly. So that's going to be the build for the standard Stormbreaker that I'm recommending. And I'm actually very happy with this one. I think it's pretty different than what most people are using, but the damage is going to be so much higher. I mean, 23 million is a lot here with more splash and less spread and stuff like that. This is going to be a pretty powerful hull, and it's going to kill things much more quickly than a lot of things that other folks are using. If you have any questions, go ahead and let me know, and I'll do my best to get back to you. I will post these build hash codes in the DerpyTheCow build stock, which is, again, linked to in the channel description. You can access that. It's brought to you by channel members, so thank you to all the folks whose names appear on screen now. You can access that 100% for free in the description of all the YouTube videos. With that said, I want to give a huge shout out to the channel members whose names appear on the end screen now. They're helping make videos like this one coming out during the middle of the holidays, by the way. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, possible. Until next time, this is Derpy signing out, helping you be a better pirate.